Yo, what's good? It's your man 100 grand Ross with The Rock Never Stops. The Detroit Pistons are in the trade news cycle, which they've been for most of the season. I think the NBA has been silently clamoring over some of the veteran assets that the Detroit Pistons have. But one name that has come up for the Detroit Pistons to potentially trade for has been Zach LaVine. And I want to dive into that in this video. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button for me, hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. Look, let me just start off by saying, ironically, Troy Weaver in the Detroit Pistons front office, they're in the driver's seat when it comes to this trade. They don't need Zach LaVine. They don't. They have veterans, Bojan Bogdanovic, Alec Burks, Monty Morris, that are playing extremely well. They're doing exactly what they've been asked to do. To buoy the ship, to give them that consistency, that know-how. And when you see the full complement of veterans on the court together, along with the young guys, they actually look like a very serviceable NBA team that should probably have a much stronger second half of the season. But even beyond this season, going forward, this team is still going to need veterans. And more in the NBA, organizations are recognizing the need for continuity. And the continuity that the Detroit Pistons are looking for is already here, meaning that they don't necessarily need to go out and try to bring someone in to buoy the ship any longer. Now, I know Zach LaVine is a great offensive talent, but it's going to take time for him to be not just acclimated to this roster, to the coaching staff, to their system, to the expectations of this organization, but there's also going to have to be a shifting in terms of how Zach LaVine views himself. Look, you have a max contract, Zach LaVine, and your team can't wait to get rid of you. That's a bad sign. You've been dealing with significant lower leg injuries throughout your career and increasingly so over the past couple years. That's another bad sign. You are a player who's extremely talented, but now you're about to be potentially moved to one of the teams with the worst records in the NBA. That is another bad sign, which means that your value doesn't necessarily match your talent level for a lot of different reasons, whether it's the lack of leadership, the lack of defense, the lack of being able to play within a system versus constantly breaking out of that system. And it's not all your fault because you haven't always had the best structure around you, best teams around you. But at this point in your career, you're going to have to begin to adjust to how the league views you and how you are going to have to play in order to maintain or even rebuild value throughout the NBA. Which means that it's going to take time for him to get used to his new identity role within the NBA, especially the Detroit Pistons organization. And we don't even know if he can or will do that, right? Because some players are just indignant. You're going to have to start me. I have a max contract and I'm going to get my shots up. And I don't care because y'all are losing anyways. He could totally, completely have a bad attitude. There is a huge, I'm not going to say a huge risk, but there's a significant risk for the Detroit Pistons in bringing him in. All these reasons lend to why the Detroit Pistons are also in the driver's seat. You see, Chicago understands, hey, they're winning without him. They're competitive without him. And if they get Bojan Bogdanovic to play that power forward role to spread the floor that much more, DeMar DeRozan and Kobe White and the rest of the crew and Nikola Vucevic are going to get off just that much more. And they're going to be that much more potent and potentially push for the play-in playoffs. Right? So they have everything to gain in this move. Plus, they get off of the contract of Zach LaVine. So the idea that the Detroit Pistons need to sweeten the deal somehow and include somebody like Jaden Ivey, right? Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson. Like, I think all of that is bluff, right? All of that is cap. You know what I mean? That's not what you're getting. If anything, if they need to include somebody like Alec Burks, they need to take back somebody like Dalen Terry, right? Somebody who also has a lot of potential, who's young, who they could use, a long athletic wing who can defend on the perimeter. Yeah, sure. You're not just going to take everything and give me the big risk. And I think that is essentially the situation that the Detroit Pistons are in. Now, at the same time, I can also see this working out well for them. You know, hey, we have one of the worst records in the league. We're not going into the play-in. We're not going into the playoffs. That's not even our outlook. Hey, you know what, Zach LaVine? Rest for the rest of the season. Get your body right. Make sure you're 120% before you step back on the court. And if you are able to step back onto the court this season, right? Sure. Cool. Let's check you out. Otherwise, let Dalen Terry potentially start at the shooting guard position. 6'7", athletic, really lengthy, excellent perimeter defender, right? You're going to improve your perimeter defense, have some really good size on the perimeter. Like, there's a lot of different things that you can do. But it's to say that it could work out. Now, I know a lot of people will look at his contract and they're like, wow, look at that, 40-something million, each year after year, what is that going to be over the next 4 seasons? But let's keep in mind that the NBA, they're making an incredible amount of money. And these new television deals are only going up, which means that these contracts are going to continue to go up. And so his contract right now that looks like a max salary, which it is, by the time that it gets to that 4th year, it's going to just look like a really good salary. Not a max. It's going to look like a really good salary. And it's probably going to fit just right for who he is if he's still playing. And so I think that Detroit does have an advantage to be able to take the opportunity to bring in a player of his talent. I think he also brings that running mate next to Cade Cunningham that you've been looking for. Instead of it being Bojan Bogdanovic, you're going to have Zach LaVine. That is an upgrade. That is an upgrade in terms of talent, scoring capability, especially when it comes to clutch time scoring. You have another guy who you can give the ball to and say, go ahead and do it. All right. Now, if you need to include a Jaden Ivey into the trade, like, you all know how I feel about him. I think he's talented, but I don't think he's it. I don't think he's him, and I don't think he's going to become him. Not saying he's not going to improve, but that's not his trajectory from my purview. And so if you need to include him, okay, go ahead and do so. But long term, if Zach LaVine can reorient himself and has that kind of humble to say, hey, you know what? I'm willing to take on a different type of role. I'm willing to recognize that what this team is building around is Jalen Duren, Asara Thompson, Cade Cunningham, and I'm going to play this role with this team. Sure, then I think it could work out. But I would not be desperate for this at all if I'm Detroit. The deal's got to be just right. It's got to be just right. You need to come out clearly as, hey, we won this trade. Yes, we gave up something, but we got something back. And not just Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is not this ultimate piece that's going to send you to where you're trying to go. All right? This is not OG Anunoby going to the Knicks just in time to, revamp that defense. And all of a sudden now they look like they're going to be scary in the playoffs, right? Imagine if they got Mitchell Robinson back and Isaiah Hartenstein and they were at full strength. That'd be a hell of a defense, right? He isn't that piece for them. And so Detroit doesn't need to be desperate for anything. They can just bide their time. And this is what I keep telling y'all. You need to reshape your expectations of this team. They are developing these young guys. They are developing their future. Their outlook is in the next 2 to 3 seasons looking at the playoffs. That means next season, at best, on the outside looking in, probably of the play-in. And if they get into the play-in, whoa, they exceeded expectations. The season after that, well, that's when they're going to start really looking at, okay, play-in tournament, right? Playoffs, right? They are building towards something. And when you get that and you understand the timeline, you understand why they might make this move. But as always, I want to know what you all think. Holler at me in the comment section. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And I'm out. Peace.